panelist who's going to speak from the perspective of law. He is a senior advocate of Nigeria. I'm talking about Chief Polaji Ayori, who qualified with an LLB from Holborn College, Law Tutors, University of London, 37 years ago. He proceeded to the Nigerian Law School in 1985 and for his National Youth Service in 1986. He was in Lagos and worked with the private law firm of Messrs. Akindelano. And then later on, he was seconded to take charge of the Lagos office. The firm is renowned for its commercial practice spanning over a period of 40 years. So he was in Akindelano and Co. until 1990, when he set up the law firm B. Ayori and Co. with offices in Lagos and Ibadan, and now Abuja in the federal capital and Port Harcourt. He was appointed Notary Public for Nigeria on the 25th of November, 1994 by the Honorable Justice Mohammed Bello. He was in 2005, he was elevated to the prestigious rank of the Senior Advocate of Nigeria on 26th September 2005. In 2007, he was appointed Pro-Chancellor and Chairman of Governing Council, Ladoke Akintola University of Technology, Ogbomoso, where he served for the statutory 4 years until 2011. He was also the chairman of the Oyo State Committee on the Decongestion of Prisons. In 2012, he was appointed chairman of the governing board of the Legal Aid Council of Nigeria by the President of the Federal Republic. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Chief Polaji Ayori to make his presentation. Thank you, Esia.
Yes, it's always a difficult task to speak after three eminent presenters, but I'll try to be very quick in putting the few points I have to share across to the audience, the participants at this very important event. First of all, I have two sets of slides. The first one is specific to Ibadan. At the present moment, I have the privilege of having an insight into what government is doing at the state level in your state. And so I may be able to share some of the things that government is doing. And it flows very well from the presentation of especially Professor Ken Ife, because it specifically talks about Ibadan in his presentation. Also, to a large extent, Mr. Oshilaja. The first slide, if you may just flow with me very quickly. After the cover page, the next slide, please. Yes, that's it. And if you look at the map of your state there, the current regeneration efforts of this of the government, and I would say, quite clearly, because this is not the political presentation, some of these things are also an offshoot from the work that previous government had started. And it makes a lot of sense when we have governments that actually build on, improve, and try to work better with what some of the things that they met on ground, rather than just jettisoning everything that came in, everything they met when they came in, right? A good example is the Ibadan Circular Road, which the government is now pursuing very, very assiduously. The plan is to integrate that circular road with the standard gauge railway that has come in, the railway that has come into Ibadan now, not only for movement of people, but also for movement of goods, cargo. to be specific. There's also the Ibadan Inland Dry Port. There is the Ibadan Airport, which the state government has applied to the federal government for an upgrade. That upgrade is being sponsored by the Oyo State government. They want an airport that will do more, right? And so between the inland dry port, the airport, the Oluyole Free Trade Zone, and the Pacesetter Industrial Park, Dr. Ken talked about an industrial park, all this integrates into the main regeneration investment of the government, which is the Ilututu Business District. That business district is situated in the northwestern part of Ibadan City. It's like a completely new initiative, and it aims to integrate all the existing infrastructural development projects of the government into a new business district. There's also the Dugbe Axis Regeneration, cleaning up the area. Dr. Fabiano talked about open spaces, talked about Bowers Tower. I think this came up in one of our earlier discussions, the Mapo Wall area and all that. Now, so that is just an introduction into what government is doing specifically at this moment. Now, my main task at this event is to talk about the legal process. That legal process has come up in 2-3 presentations before me, and it is something that when we talk about regeneration, we tend to put in the back burner, but really and truly, that is the starting point. It comes with the planning stage, the initiation stage. That is where the legal aspect should be taken care of. So there is no form of regeneration that can happen without acquisition of land. I like the way Dr. Ken put it. You take people's land, even though it appears for their overall benefit. That is what you think you are doing for them. But really and truly, you are actually taking over people's property. And you must follow the law strictly in doing this. The laws around acquisition, as simple as they appear to be, have always been a source of serious dispute between the landowners, the community, the government, and the businessmen investing in the regeneration process. So you have the laws regarding acquisition of land by government, that is payment of due compensation, ensuring that the right people are paid the compensation, and ensuring that the acquired property or acquired land is used for public purpose. Public purpose has been very well defined by our courts over the years. It's a very strict, the parameters are not very wide when it comes to public purpose. Are you going to use the place for a public school, a public health facility, public recreation facility? And over the years, the courts have refused to widen the scope of what public purpose is. So, for example, if you, I'll give you some example, like in Lagos now, there are several litigations going on around the Dangote Free Trade Zone. I am involved in quite a number of them. Government acquires land and says this is a free trade zone, and next minute you see Dangote structures coming up all over the place. So the people are back in court and saying that no, yes, you acquired for a free trade zone, but you have given the property to a private entrepreneur. Now, the danger with this is that private investors tend to move back knowing fully well that even if government allocates land to them or they invest in certain infrastructure where you are regenerating, the original owners of the land may come back at them. So what is the way out for that? The way out for that is what was the concern raised by Dr. Fagbiro. Regeneration, yes, thank you. The slide is there, but I've moved quite on because I want to keep strictly to my time. Now, the way out there, regeneration cannot be successfully delivered by government, not only the state government, the local governments. The way out is for legislation by the State House of Assembly, creating what's, say, for example, in Ibadan Urban Renewal Board. Now, this board has the backing of the law. So it plugs into the support of the local government and the state government. It is this board that takes care of the legal compliance issues with regards to acquisition. Now, you don't only acquire for public purpose, the board also ensures that it enters into specific contractual relationship with the original owners of the land, so that apart from you satisfying the regulatory or the statutory requirements for acquisition, you are also satisfying the contractual requirements between that board and the original owners of the land. Now, so investors are now dealing with this board, knowing fully well that the whatever could cause problems or disputes with the original landowners have been taken care of by the board. So you would see from the slide, I talked about displacement and relocation of individuals. Government, as a matter of importance, must find alternative to persons who are displaced from their land. When you are going about this regeneration things, Lagos, we cite Lagos as examples of some regeneration activities, but Lagos has not done particularly well in relocating people. Ajah, Morocco, we still have tales of woe. The original owners not really knowing where to go. We are still on the Third Mainland Bridge. On your right, coming in from the mainland, you still see the slum of the Morocco houses on the lagoon. So all these from dislocation, from displacement should not be, because as much as we want new construction, new development, new investment, we must also make sure that we use the legal regime to look after squatters, to prevent situations where we now have squatter slums, where we have breakup of social relationships. We even offset the existing economic systems and opportunities of the local people. So basically, the law is a very potent instrument in making sure from day one, when we want to start and get on with all this regeneration thing, to be able to sort out problems that may arise in the future. I would like to stop. I just want to keep time. If there are any questions after, I will be very glad to speak to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief Ayori. Ladies and gentlemen, we are just going to take the last paper by the last presenter, the last speaker, and he's an architect, and he's going to be speaking to us from the perspective of the built city. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Mr. Taiwo Iluyomade, and he holds a bachelor degree in architecture from the Washington State University of Idaho. And his experience immediately started in architecture, construction and development. In the early 80s was his first exposure to prefabrication, where he applied design and built the mode of construction for single and multi-family residential properties in Maryland and the USA. In the company where he worked, they were able to deliver high-end residences averaging $6 million and above. He says that this early experience prepared him for the next phase from 1983 to 2010, as he specialized in religious high-end multifamily residential projects. Currently, from 2003, TLI Design Limited, of which is an EG, was established and promptly won a design competition for the now built Redeemed Christian Church of God King's Court in Victoria Island in Lagos. His company also won a design competition and got awarded the iconic 12 billion naira Trinity Towers, also in Victoria Island. He's been relocated to Nigeria since 2010, invited by a former classmate in the US to primarily resuscitate his earlier prefab experience. Starting from 2011, TLI Design Limited was able to construct large schools using light gauge steel construction materials in Victoria Island and Ikeja. In 2019, the consortium was able to add an additional floor on 2 departmental buildings at the University of Ibadan. This was done applying dry construction with light gauge steel methodology. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming architect Taiwo Iluyomade. Thank you for joining us.
Great. I'm going to do this in 5 minutes because I know that all the smart people went before me. And I want to thank Mr. Yomi Layinka for moderating this. It's just incredible work. I also want to thank the Nigerian British Infrastructure Group, and especially Pastor Mr. Polaji Andu, because we started a discussion decades ago when he came to Baltimore, Maryland in the USA, and saw some of the work we were doing here. So it's really exciting that he's breathed some life into this. And I'm going to be talking generally about actual neighborhoods and how we can regenerate and renew some of these cities. And particularly, we're going to be talking about historic Ibadan city. Now, what you see in this first slide is Mapo Hall, which we're going to be doing some work on. You see the slides later. You can also see this is a majestic neoclassical architecture, which I think is just amazing. I can imagine all the architectural students all over Nigeria coming to for an excursion to learn the history of how this was built and the strategic location. But what you can see here is a row of cars right in front of it. So the access to this building is is not utilized greatly. So let me go to the next slide. Okay, so we're going to be talking pretty much about the history of Ibadan, the city of 7 hills. What you see in most cities all over the world is these cities are known for the culture, for the history, and usually for monuments. Mapo Hall is one of them. We're going to be talking about so many of these things. It's also a city of 7 hills and several firsts. It's amazing when I went and did the history and found out that Ibadan had the first television station in Africa. I think that's really amazing. The Cocoa House building, which you're going to see in a minute or two, towering 26 stories, the first skyscraper in tropical Africa, built in 1965 with proceeds from commodities and not oil. So that's really amazing. I think these are monuments that needs to be kept. The famous Bowers Tower that was shown a few minutes ago, 24 stories, 60 feet tall, was used as a watchtower during colonization. Then you have the Femi Johnson glass house, the first glass house in Ibadan, which still towers and looks really great. The Mako Hall, like I said earlier, was built in 1929 and neoclassical architecture. So what, before we even go further, I'm going to be doing some work also on the dynamic and cultural yam street markets, the Oja Oba. You see what we've been able to do here, because I think, to me, that's one of the most cultural, romantic, I think. Every time I go to Ibadan, I really go back and see that. So let's go to the next slide. Here are some pictures of Makoha. Being in the design profession, I look at these pictures and I said, it could be anywhere in Europe, anywhere in the world. Why are we not taking advantage of it? Last time I was in Ibadan, I found out it's being controlled by the local government. To do a visit to this structure costs 500 naira. Well, not many people are going there. So to me, there needs to be a strategy at how we can develop this as a tourist location. All right, here's my favorite part of Ibadan, which is the yam markets. But I look at all the yams that are being displayed over gutters, the Oja Oba, which is very near to Mako Hall. I see the beautiful pictures, the beautiful paintings. Ibadan's people, or maybe generally Africans, we love bright colors. And I think that can be developed further. That can be instituted in some of the things we're doing. Next slide. Okay, we'll go to the Cbd District. This is downtown Ibadan. Right there to the right is the Cocoa House, and then to the left is the Femi Johnson Glass House. And to me, you can look on the ground.
I appreciate that fully. We needed it. It should have been the full screen.
Can you see me?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So you can see this, and then you can see the hardscape all around the buildings. And to me, that's really amazing what we can do, and they've done all over the world. Now, by 2030, let me move my picture away from there. All right. So by 2030, this is very scary, actually, when I heard about it. Africa's population will exceed Europe and South America combined. So we really need to start thinking about regeneration of our cities and our neighborhoods. And what I also found out, some of the people who have talked about this, is that in order to have a successful regeneration, Ibadan is well positioned because of the history of the place. So we draw on the history, the culture, and the economy. Very important. The history and culture is an asset, can be an asset rather than a drain on resources. We have not taken advantage of that. Culture is considered a luxury where socioeconomic needs are not being met. So I see all those people that are selling yams, and I wonder how much revenue are they contributing to the economy? Nothing, probably. It can be, so this can be a catalyst for the development of the blighted areas. So basically, the culture and history can and will breathe life into the legacy of past civilizations through so many aspects. Let me go to the next. I'm trying to do this in 5 minutes. So governments can generate revenue. When we talk about generating revenue or creating revenue for the city, I think the governments are trying to wonder, well, how do we get our money back? Or where is the money coming from? And we have to invest in water, in power, and sewage before any of this can happen. If we don't have the infrastructure for this, who's going to fund it? But it can be done through, like everybody has said, public-private partnerships, tax incentives from government, and then we can adaptive reuse of housing infrastructure, like the Mako Hall. We renovate it, we gentrify that area so that tourism can be better utilized there. All right. So what we've been able to do, you look at these two slides. This is the same Mako Hall area with the grand steps. Right now, what we have prior to this is that it's blocked off. In Nigeria now, what people are doing is they're making so much money, governments are making so much money from advertisements. So there's a band right in front of it that's blocking the building. So why don't we begin to create squares? You know, I think all over the world, cities have areas where people can gather, they can have political rallies. So I've dubbed this the Mako Square, removed the roundabout there, moved it to the front of it, and we shifted the road to the left. So we have an area with a very massive monument, not the tiny ones that we have all over the place, and with waterfalls. And I see this as an area for political rallies, for whatever the city wants to do, and it becomes the Mako Square. So that's what we've been able to do. Let's go to the next slide. Here's some other slides of what this is just a proposal. I think such projects like this will need to be discussed with the local people and group of architects and designers and urban planners. All right, here's my favorite part, the Oja Oba, the yam markets. So I see the yams were previously displayed over drains, exposed drains. How about we bring in containers and open them up so the yams are inside the containers? We create a pathway where the local transportation kekes are, it's separated from the main road, because anytime you're in that area, there's immense traffic. So this needs to be done. And when I come there to buy my yams, you see the yams are stacked right there. They go right back into the container, rather than, I don't know where they hide the yams when at the end of the day, then they bring them back out again. It's overexposed drains. So here's just a proposal of how we can gentrify, regenerate neighborhood by neighborhood. We now go to the CBD District. You can see Cocoa House in the foreground, in the back there. We renovated Cocoa House. Then we have new buildings, new apartments and lofts and restaurants that can make Ibadan city vibrant. I really think that the young professionals should be moving back into the city, not going to Bodija. Everybody wants to go outside of the city. But if city is developed enough, then we'll all want to live in the city. Just like I would love to live on Broad City in Lagos, but right now it's been underutilized. There's some other ideas of what we can do. We bring in good architecture, new buildings, and maintain the existing buildings for the history of Lagos. So the future is exciting, and what can happen are some of these pictures that you've seen here. There has to be a concerted effort at how do we make it really look nice? How do we do the hardscape, the infrastructure? We can have loft apartments, artwork, galleries, food markets, gyms, recreation, entertainment, restaurants, health services, loft apartments, and retail stores. These are all these things that we enjoy when most of us travel outside the country. Why can't we do this in the Ibadan city? Why can't we do this in a city? And the way I think we can address this is to take neighborhood by neighborhood. What can we do here? And see how it can be achieved. Thank you very, very much. The best is yet to come.
Yeah, indeed. The best is yet to come. Thank you very much, Mr. Taiwo Iliomade, for that exciting presentation about what can be done and what should be done. Thank you very much. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we've had the 5th panel presentation so far. And it's been exciting, I guess, for every one of us. Once again, we apologize for some of those technical hitches. We will get them better in future conversations, because I must mention at this point that this is one in a series of conversations that we're going to be having on this subject about regenerating cities. What our panelists have done is to make a case for regenerating Nigerian cities. We've had quite a number of comments, as I mentioned before, on our in our chat room. Some of them are comments, some of them are questions. I'll just go on a portrait manner to just pick a few that we've received. I mean, Messrs. Adeyemi, Akeju, and Femi Alabi asked to know whether we'll be able to get slides from these presentations. I would ask Mr. Afolabi Andrew to respond to that at some point. For Mr. Kazim Bello, he had some concerns, and this is for Professor Ken Ife, so be prepared to respond to this, Professor Ife. He is worried about the seeming emphasis on the role of governments in these matters, saying what we have understandably come to learn and the cynicism that has grown over time about how our governments seem to consistently mess things up rather than fix them. So he's worried. So I'd like you to respond to that and to assuage that concern that government may in fact be a mitigating factor. We also have from Mr. Adeyemi Akeju another comment about, and I think this is for as many of you as can respond. What are the low-hanging actions that can be deployed? In other words, before we get to the next level of the big ideas and all of that, what immediate next steps can be taken to concretize some of these good ideas? We also have the pleasure of the company of Professor Tokwe Alunge, who is the immediate past Chief Medical Director of the University College Hospital Ibadan, one of the most iconic structures in Nigeria. He hopes that the proceeds of this conversation and webinar will be made available to engage the Oyo State government and such other governments. Now, this is a direct question for Barry. Mr. Oshilaja, the question is that from a larger perspective, would you consider regeneration, regenerating cities as priorities for Nigeria, rather than what the Asian tigers, including China and some aggressive Mid-Eastern countries have done by directing core infrastructure development funds in creating and developing brand new cities and greenfield projects? Now, he did concede that perhaps the case of London and Beirut regeneration may have been compelled by the non-availability of land for new projects in the instances we gave. So he would like to know whether Nigeria should prioritize regeneration of moribund or decaying cities rather than creating new ones. A final question that we have is for both Mr. Oshilaja and Mr. Fagbenro Byron. And this is about political will. He asks to know, how do we encourage the political will that supports regeneration? So these are broad questions. So I'm going to just ask that the panelists indicate, perhaps just take it in the order I've asked the question. So if we can have Professor Ken Ife come first on his response to this concern about the overt emphasis on government's role in regeneration. Professor Ken Ife, if you're there, could you kindly respond?
Yeah, I'm here.
Good, please.
Well, what I would say is that the government is the necessary evil that we have to engage with, because in any development partner or even anybody going to approve a major investment inflow into the country, the first thing they will ask you is, where is the government policy? Where is the government buying? You are telling them to bring billions of dollars and put somewhere, and somebody will shut it down overnight. And then sometimes they may ask for guarantees. So honestly, you got to get a government involvement and their buy-in, so that you satisfy the minimum conditions required for any serious investor to get involved. All right. Second thing, of course, is we need to have a strategy. You know, so that I just want to connect it to the question of next step, because you need a strategy, you need a plan. If anybody you are going to talk to wants to see where is the government principle or policy that says that they're interested in this, now where is the plan? Where is the strategy? They want to see that before they know how they fit in. And then they, of course, want to know that given the plan, given the government buy-in, how about the local communities? That question is answered, because they know. Look at what the oil companies are having with the government owing 60%. They are still bleeding through their nose, and let alone because of community. The communities are becoming a big headache to whatever investment they have in there. So they look at all of that. And of course, when these conditions are met, private sector will come. We don't look for them. They know. And don't forget that some of these private sector are already in the country. They're already in Lagos, running one factory or the other. They will be looking to expand because they are finding the place suffocating. So they would want to expand to Ibadan, which is only one hour away, rather than stay where they are and suffocating. So you don't need to go far to look for those who are going to invest, even if they're not investing directly. Those who may want to invest in the country are going to be trying to sound them out to find out what they think. Do they think it's going to work? And all of that. And finally, let me tell you something about, we say concentrating on developing brand new city, or we don't even have the infrastructure. Where are you going to build new brand city, and then what infrastructure is going to go into the brand new city? You can't even have enough power. So there's so many things that will come in when you're going to build the new brand city. And we've seen World Bank projects where they went somewhere and built a gigantic international market, and nobody wants to go there, because by the time they finish building it, the cost of selling it and the cost of nobody can afford it. So we have to look at cost of that brand new development and look at the affordability of that brand new development, and then see how and also even government has so much land everywhere. Look at it in the south, our south, we have so many thousands of hectares that we acquired for farm settlement or one thing. So it's easier to get in a government already acquired land and then do deals than to go and start going to buy another 100,000 hectares, and then you're going to have more issues in your hands. I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. It's interesting. So we might as well just segue to Mr. Barry Oshilaja to take it from there in response to this question of whether or not Nigeria should prioritize regenerating the old cities or building new ones.
Thank you very much. I think, Mr. Bello, thank you for your question. I think we have to do both. And by the way, the issue of, it's not an issue of regeneration versus brownfield versus greenfield. Certainly, if you think back 30 years ago, until the Lekki Expressway was built, you did not have the whole of that axis, the east axis of Lagos built. And today it has about 2 million plus people living on that stretch. And that was simply by building that road. And by the way, all of it, apart from that road, is private sector money. All the houses you see, all the development you see, primarily private sector money, apart from that road. So infrastructure does work, and it can open up areas. But as an adage that I've heard many times when I was much younger in starting life in profession, it is about land, and they don't make them anymore. Apart from when Dubai decided to change that adage and started to make new land in the oceans. Yes, what we have in terms of decay, you need to revitalize brownfield areas, whether it's the center of Lagos Broad Street, whether it is part of Ibadan, whether it is Kaduna, or indeed Port Harcourt, that today is sort of in a decay state. All of those things need to happen. The answer is you have to do both, and it is right that you cannot do one without the other. Again, as part of new building of cities, you have Eco Atlantic, which is a brand new city the size of Victoria Island. Again, it is something that was done by government. The more important thing, which is also important to what Professor Ike said earlier, there is no regeneration without the backing of government. Nobody will fund it. Nobody funds it unless you have government or it is statute backed. Every example that I have or that everybody has given here, you need the government to facilitate it, to sponsor it, to support it. But the implementation generally must be left to the private sector. Of course, the government gets involved. Thank you. I hope that helps.
Yes, it does help. Thank you very much. Let's take it then to Mr. Shina Fagbero Byron to tie it up, especially regarding this question of if government is required, how do we mobilize that government to generate the political will for sustainable implementation?
Okay, thank you very much. On a lighter mood, I mean, we elect the governments, and I think we should pay a bit more attention before people get into government than searching for political will after they get into government. We are supposed to be a civilized society. And so the issue of getting political will, it's called political will. It's actually political free will. So it is left to us to be able to understand the trajectory of certain governments and certain persons and interrogate as to whether people who are coming into government understand these issues. Closely tied to that is the fact that if you look at Lagos, Lagos is just concluding a 25-year development plan, and it is going on to a 30-year development plan. You know, I was part of that process of its initial 25-year development plan. And when people ask, oh, the people, when you're in Lagos, they'll say, oh, there's the master plan, Tinubu has the master plan. It is real. There was a master plan. There is a master plan, which contemplated some of this long-term regeneration of cities and the sustainability thereof. Is a long-term issue. Anybody who is going to invest money wants his returns on investment. And he wants to make, and this speaks to what Barry said and what Professor Ken said, the enabling environment must be there. So by your instruments, your plans, what you have in place, today, Ekiti State has just concluded a 30-year development plan. Lagos is going to start another 30-year development plan. Bauchi is going to start another 20-year development plan. You see, so it is with these signs like this that you know. But, you know, political will is political will. When the man is in power, there are things you can do and things you cannot do. Let me just make a few mention of something, low-hanging fruits. We mentioned low-hanging fruits, and Taiwo Liomade has said quite a bit about culture, heritage. We can cherry pick. You don't have to do the entire city at the same time. Pick something. Take, for example, look at the former dump site on Ring Road. They converted it into a mall, ShopRite. It's no longer a dump site. There are places like cultural areas that, you know, we go for it in bits and pieces. Another low-hanging fruit, which is more of, it's what I call a software, is to start building a new culture of maintenance and understanding, right? So that's another one is, let us identify some of our public services that need attention. Waste management alone. We could do, just if we're doing waste management alone, the identification of dump sites, recycling of waste, and doing a few things like that, or opening new transport spaces, that in itself can trigger. What happens usually in regeneration programs is that one program or one project triggers something else. When something happens in one space, it catapults or dovetails into another space. And that's how it goes and goes on. So basically, putting it this way, political will, it's up to us to pay attention and identify. You can't force a hot water to the stream to drink. You can force it to the water, but you can't force it to drink. And then another thing is that why Lagos succeeded, and this is what many people do not know, is that Lagos State, there's a healthy private sector and a healthy media that constantly holds government to account. In Lagos, you have at least 67 people that do not eat from government, that do not depend on government contracts. And so they are not fearful of challenging government. So Lagos has a culture of people challenging government from time to time. Media, civil society, private sector. And so there is no government who will come to Lagos and will not sit up. If we can have that in any city, people who are prepared to challenge government, hold them to account on what needs to be done. Civil society groups that are environmental and stuff like that. Anyway.
Thank you.
I suspect that. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Well, as we begin to wind down, I'm going to come to Architect Liomade, particularly regarding these low-hanging actions that can be taken to implement some of these ideas. But I like some of what Byron just said regarding the instances he cited about states that have 20, 30-year development plans. Now, I want to bring in Chief Ayori on that. Is there a way that we can use the instrumentality of law to bind, so to say, governments into long-term planning? As one of the commentators on our chat has said, we have a situation in Nigeria where most state governments do not think beyond their 4-year cycles. Now, and that is why they abandon projects, because they want to do things that they can take credit for or share money from or whatever. But is there a way in which we can use the instrumentality of law to have long-term plans that are binding on successive governments? Chief Ayori, any thoughts on that?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. That was why I mentioned the creation of an urban renewal agency, which is a standalone body recognized by law. It is to be established and backed up by legislation from the House of Assembly. So it becomes a legal entity on its own. And because you will remember that Dr. Fabian mentioned that point, right? We need to go beyond planning with the local government or the state government in these things. If you come to the, if you look at the structures that cities use in the UK, in America, they actually have bodies that are quite independent of government. Government gives the policy, government gives the direction, government lays the foundation, but the implementation goes to a kind of body, call it a board, you could call it an agency, but it is really backed by law, and it enters into contractual relationship with investors. One thing about those contractual relationships, it will spell out everybody's rights and obligations. It will spell out modes of dispute resolution, and the punishment for breaches will be quite severe. So we now see a situation whereby even if the government changes, you know, the business goes on. So that's the solution to that.
Thank you. That's a very instructive one. But of course, we do recall, I mean, by the way, we were talking about that off camera, I think yesterday, about the experience of the Sustainable Ibadan project. I mean, many years ago, a mutual friend of some of us here, unfortunately is passed on now, Kunle Bolariwa, was in charge of the Ibadan municipal government, and he had all of these bubbly ideas and was going to do some of these things you talked about. Now, the question is, what suddenly happened? Why have they not carried forward, particularly with the kind of major intervention that we thought the Sustainable Ibadan project was going to become as an example to other cities? But let me bring in Architect Iliomade on this. I did ask, maybe you want to speak to the specific low-hanging actions that can be deployed, not only by government, but by even community-based organizations to begin to exploit these regeneration that we've spoken about.
Okay, thank you very much. I think maybe because of my design background, I aim to solve, to experience, when you want to experience architecture or neighborhoods, is I want to be able to experience it. And a lot of us on this panel have, you know, we lived abroad. Some of us are still there. So I take them by neighborhood by neighborhood. If you look at the Makpo Hall, which you can term Makpo Square, okay, because all over Europe they have piazzas, they have areas, Trafalgar Square, you know. But the Makpo Hall, to me, is I think about the architectural students all over the country that can go and visit and study neoclassical architecture. When people come from outside the country for tourism, they're looking to see the history and the culture. So if we take that road away from the front of Mako Hall, we moved it away, we create a massive monument. And I don't know who the person is on that. There's a statue of somebody at the roundabout in front of Mako Hall. We put it on a pedestal high enough so it's massive enough to make a difference, and we can refer to this area as Mako Square. Then we create an area in front of it that will have access to those steps. And I see this area becoming a community area. It's not going to cost a lot of money to do that. And then in order for citizens to use that area, the government also can have tax incentives for that. It has to be maintained, of course, because usually when you have a square area in most places in Nigeria, then squatters just come in and do whatever they want. Okay, so and then the market area. To me, anytime I drive past the market area, it's just amazing traffic. It's because nobody's thinking about that. So, and the people that are selling the yams, I don't know if they live in the houses behind where they lay the yams, but I can bet you that when Caucasians or people from all over the country want to see, maybe some of them have never seen a yam before, they want to go to the markets. If we create something that's inviting, that we can go there ourselves, we can, the yams are in containers, we have a functional drain. These are all things that I think the government can invest in, or private people. If it's going to be a private venture, then the government has to allow the private entity to get some revenue from that. But if we take neighborhood by neighborhood and we start doing that, I think we can transform a whole city. Rather than, I mean, we talk about infrastructure, building roads and all those things, but that doesn't really impact me as a citizen, or the people selling yams there. I want to create something that when we displace them from the CBD area, then they feel like they've gained something, because we've not chased them out of that area. We've helped them to make it a better place for everybody. So there are many neighborhoods like that all over Ibadan and all over Nigeria and all the cities that I think we can address.
Thank you very much, Architect Iluyomade. Thank you very much. We'll be doing the thanks in a moment, but I just want to mention, by the way, it's important that for our participants, you probably would have noticed a preponderance of the mention of Ibadan as a sample city that work has already commenced on. But it can be Enugu, it can be Kaduna, it can be Abuja, it can be any other major city. I mean, specifically, for instance, especially talking about the cultural values that Architect Iluyomade and Dr. Chinonso Byron have spoken a lot about. How about Ife? Become Ile Ife as the origin of the Yoruba people across the world. It can be regenerated to become the cultural mecca of Yoruba people and the Black diaspora. Such interventions, I'm sure, like Dr. Fagbero said earlier on, will attract some interest because of the cultural, historical values that Ife as a community, or Oshogbo, or such other cultural centers, major centers across the country. I'm going to be calling on Engineer Dapo Sulu, who's the president of the Engineering Forum of Nigeria, and also the director of technical operations of NBIG, the Nigerian British Infrastructure Group, to give us some closing remarks as we begin to wind down. I can see a hand up, but I'll be back after Engineer Sulu gives these closing remarks. Thank you.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for your contributions today. It's an honor to be in the presence of such leading lights in the key professions, such as legal, engineering, architecture, finance, economics, academia, business management, and town planning. And we're all grateful for the presentations, thoughts, and ideas of our panelists on how we can regenerate our cities. It is clear for all to see that in order for Nigeria to reach its full potential, her cities need to be regenerated, upgraded, and revamped in order to allow for increased economic activity, improved social well-being, and for the restoration of peace throughout our land. The presentations made today by our panelists, who are experts in the various aspects of this wide-ranging topic, show that the knowledge required to kickstart this initiative lies within easy reach. All that is required is for our political leaders to listen to this advice and take the first steps to move Nigerian cities to the next level. A lot of the recommendations made today are tried and tested and have helped to develop major cities of the world. Once again, I thank all the panelists for their contributions, the moderator for the masterful handling of this event, and members of the audience for taking time out of their busy schedules to attend and participate. For those who are interested in knowing more about the Nigerian British Business Group, please visit our website, www.nbigroup.co.uk, for further information. Thank you very much, and I'll hand back to the moderator. Thank you.
I didn't plan this, but I would have to, even though Sulu has said we can go onto a website to follow up and find out more. But I'm going to call Prince Afolabi Andrew to kindly respond to this question of whether or not members of the audience, especially those who graciously attended this event today, whether they can have slides from these presentations. That's one. Two, and more importantly, is what happens next? How do we move this conversation to the next level of action? Thank you. Mr. Prince Afolabi Andrew.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Polaji, as I fondly call you. And let me also use this opportunity to commend yourself and the entire team for such a sterling presentation this afternoon. In response to the slides, yes, of course, but what will be required, if the interested parties could kindly make a request via our website, just go onto the website where you have the request form, make a request, and we will respond to your needs in that regard. Moving forward, the whole essence of us having the organization is really designed to interface and engage government at all levels. We are effectively a consortium. So what you find in terms of a play out, the role that our associate partners would be playing eventually. They are going to be the ones who will be carrying out most of the technical work once we start to partner with government bodies as we proceed forth. But in a nutshell, the objective very simply is for us to carry the organization and present it as a structure that is designed to deploy the very best when it comes to infrastructure support within the context of development in our country. So yes, if that has helped in any way to respond to the question in terms of clarity, NBIG is here to work with government and to also bring the resources within into the areas of need. I hope that is clear. Or...
Yes, thank you very much, Prince Afolabi Andrew. Thank you so very much. And I think that this is the point at which we begin to wrap it all up for this session. As I mentioned earlier on, there will be more of these sessions to think through the ideas, come up with the strategies, and develop action plans for their implementation. I think I want to emphasize the part just beyond the panel, beyond the organizers of this event, for all of us involved who have made the efforts to join this conversation. We do owe ourselves a generational responsibility, not to leave this country as disjointed and devalued as it appears to be. As some of us have said in private conversations, we were all growing up in these cities, and they were not quite like this. And therefore, it's our responsibility now to act together to ensure that we do not leave broken cities for the future generation, who do not then have public spaces to play around with, who do not have the vistas to open their minds to development. We owe ourselves the responsibility of recreating a Nigeria worthy of the future generation, so that we all may be thanked for sacrificing our time and effort and working together, because it's not enough to complain. It's not enough to be the armchair critic. It's important that we begin to synergize and work together to create solutions, even if bit by bit. We may not get there today, but we can at least take one step at a time and be consistent in taking those steps over time. I'd like to thank you for kindly joining us from all across the world. I'd like to thank distinguished panelists who have given us the benefits of their experiences and knowledge. And we do certainly appreciate what you have done. And history will be kind to you for sacrificing your time to share your thoughts and knowledge with all of us. I'd like to also thank Visage World for sponsoring the event. They put it all together, funding and sponsoring and coordinating. I'd like to also thank Cbd Technologies for the web services and broadcast provision. They have been very, very helpful in providing the web services and broadcast services. Visage PR agency provided all the promo and publicity materials, so we want to thank them for their kind support. First View Television and Gab Productions provided all online broadcast production facilities and all the promo. We thank them all for their sacrifice and contributions. Once again, I'd like to thank our distinguished invitees who join us. I'd like to thank our panelists, and I'd like to put you on notice that we'll be back very soon. Thank you very much.